We're trying to understand the nuts and bolts of what happens in individual cells, in distinct regions of the brain that underlie Parkinson's disease. We're always looking for opportunities to try and provide outlets for our research to the general public. I think it's very important.
So I had a show here in the Life Space Gallery in 2017, and Miratul, he came to the exhibition and we got talking, and it was first conversations. It would be great to do something together.
She spent a week in my lab, and she spent that week shadowing different people in my lab and working on different techniques. She really got into the details of what these techniques were. She got a real breadth of experience.
That was an intensive time of collecting visual material and trying to understand the research. All the time that I was learning about the research, there was a process of translation going on in my head. I was trying to make sense of all of this in terms of my own art practice. So this was the sort of cross-disciplinary conversation going on in my head, and that took a long time to unfold. I ran some workshops for a small group of people with Parkinson's. The way I approached this was to, first of all, test with art materials that offered the least resistance to the hand. So a lot of repeating of abstract marks to create an overall texture whereby it didn't matter if certain marks were, not as intended. It was fantastic. And the unexpected part of that was I had persuaded Miratul to come along.
The fact that I was doing an activity alongside them and had nothing to do with their condition, but just seeing me as their doctor doing an activity with them and having fun with them, they actually really noted that, and it really was very liberating and very empowering.
And it just made me think, well, this is what I would like to happen in the final outcome, to bring all of those elements together and for it to be interactive. I initially made the drawings and then I scanned them. And as I was scanning them, I moved them, I manipulated them on the scanner. And what this did is created an interference. It basically created a mutation. I realized, well, this is it. This is what the research is about. It's about mutations in genes, and it's also some words that kept recurring when I spoke to scientists was misfold, the misfolding of a protein, which is implicated in cell degeneration and in Parkinson's. So here I had a conceptual link. So from one drawing, I had 2 or 3 mutations. And again, by chance, I saw some laser cutter prints on paper, which literally burn an image into a paper. So there are lots of perforations, and at other times you have this faint sepia line on the paper. We needed about 7 or 8 scientists to volunteer to take part in this. So Miratul asked some of his colleagues to come along. We did role play. And actually, interestingly, once they got into the situation, they were all absolutely fine.
It was not exactly what I was expecting, but it was actually really fun, and I think Daksha took the workshop really well. And the training involved basically looking at the pictures and organizing them as we saw it, so I think that was kind of to prime our, thinking as if we were the guests a little bit as well. And then we were talking about the pictures, we were talking about the thought process of Daksha's, like how she came to do these pictures and how she got involved in the project in the first place.
I thought, well, actually, why don't I bring the scientists into the forefront? So they're the first people that you meet as you walk into the space. And it occurred to me, what if the scientists were talking about artworks? What if they were talking about my prints rather than a scientific image?
The exhibition involved several components, and the first component is meeting the scientists in my lab that actually performed the research so that they could provide that background information, but also just having a general discussion with them about the actual art itself.
There was some ambiguity, which led the scientists to say, well, this suggests to me it could be, it probably is, but the conversation was along those lines as opposed to, well, this is, and I can tell you about this, I am the expert. And this allowed the visitor in turn to say, I see this, I chose this print, I see this, within it, and the scientists to then respond by saying what they saw within the print. So it became an exchange.
And then the movement, the going from the first part of the exhibition to then going to Daksha, and then finding out from Daksha what the genesis behind the art was.
So often when you come into an exhibition, and the artist will have chosen, or with the curator, where the artwork goes, how it's framed, all of those parameters. So it felt really important that the person who had chosen the print could see this installation upon the wall and choose visually where it fitted within the larger overall picture. So as they came in, invited people to have a look on the wall and to choose where they would like to place their print. First of all, it allowed people to really examine closely what was already on the wall. They could ask me questions if they wanted to. Interestingly, scientists immediately looked for so what's going on here? What's the system? Other people made visual decisions. So there was a variety of approaches involved.
Everybody loved it. Like, they had really good time and had really interesting conversations, and I think all of us actually got something out of it that like actually opened up something. Like, for me, it was the fact that I saw the pictures differently after having a conversation with somebody.
As an artist, to have access to the kinds of things that go on here, is amazing. I've loved working with Miratul, and everyone I've met here been just really open and generous, very generous with their time.
It's been much more than I imagined from the very beginning. When we first spoke about it, I did not know what Daksha would come up with, not just in terms of her art, which is stunning and in its simplicity and beauty, but also in the way that she decided in the end to have the MISPRINTS exhibition in the way that it was. That was very much her idea, actually bringing the scientists back to the final part of it and making them very much the living, breathing component as much as Daksha. That in the end was really powerful. It was far more than what I envisaged at the beginning.